The sun didn't rise over Ethelgard, it simply bruised the sky, a deep, concussive purple that signaled another day of the great drizzle. In the city of Oakhaven, which, ironically, hadn't seen an actual oak tree since the age of steam, Elias Thorne sat in a workshop that smelled of ozone and regret. Elias was a fixer. Not the kind who hides bodies or settles debts with a crowbar, but the kind who mends the impossible. People brought him shattered heirlooms, rusted automatons, and once, a clock that allegedly told the time in a dimension where Tuesdays didn't exist. The unwelcome visitor. The bell above his door chimed, a weary, metallic sound. In walked a woman wrapped in a coat of shimmering beetle wings. She didn't look like she belonged in the drizzle. She looked like she belonged in a palace made of light. "They say you can fix anything," she said, her voice like glass grinding on silk. "I fix things that obey the laws of physics," Elias replied without looking up from a brass gearbox. "Mostly." She placed a small, velvet bag on the scarred wooden counter. It didn't clink. It didn't thud. It made a sound like a caught breath. When Elias opened it, he didn't find gears or springs. He found shards of something that looked like frozen lightning. "It's a song," she whispered. "The anthem of the first star. It broke when the silence came, and now my people have forgotten how to dream." The journey into the weave. Elias knew better than to take the job. You don't just weld a melody back together. But the drizzle was getting colder, and his rent was 3 weeks overdue. To fix the song, Elias had to travel to the weave, a place between places where reality is held together by fraying threads of intent. He packed his kit. A tuning fork tempered in a dragon's sneeze. Silver wire no thicker than a thought. A flask of strong coffee, non-negotiable. As he descended into the sub-basements of the world, the physics began to warp. Gravity became a suggestion. The walls started whispering his old mistakes. "Memory is the rust of the soul," the walls hissed. Elias ignored them. He focused on the shards. He realized they weren't broken by force, they were broken by discord. Someone had tried to play a lie through a medium of absolute truth. The repair. In the heart of the weave, Elias found the anvil of echoes. He laid out the shards. He didn't use a hammer. Instead, he began to hum, a low, gravelly tune his father had sung in the mines. It was a song of dirt, sweat, and the quiet satisfaction of a day's work. It wasn't grand, but it was solid. The shards of lightning began to vibrate. They didn't want to be a first star anymore, they were tired of the heights. Elias realized the song didn't need to be restored to its former glory. It needed to be grounded. He wove the silver wire through the light, binding the celestial fragments to the rhythm of his own heartbeat. The math of it was dizzying, a calculation of harmonics that looked something like this. Where \epsilon represented the human error that gave the music its soul. The aftermath. When Elias returned to Oakhaven, the woman in the beetle-wing coat was waiting. He handed her a small, glowing sphere. It didn't shine with a blinding light, it glowed with the warm amber of a hearth fire. She pressed it to her ear. She didn't hear a divine anthem. She heard the sound of rain on a tin roof, the smell of baking bread, and the steady pulse of a city that refused to give up. "It's different," she said, a tear tracing a path through the dust on her cheek. "It's better," Elias said. "It's a song you can actually live to." She left, and for the first time in a century, the drizzle stopped. A single, stubborn oak sapling cracked through the cobblestones outside his shop. Elias sighed, picked up his brass gearbox, and went back to work. There was always something else breaking. The sapling outside the shop grew an inch for every hour the woman walked away, its roots drinking the first real sunlight Oakhaven had seen in generations. But Elias didn't watch it. He was staring at his hands. They were stained with silver soot and smelling of ozone, a weaver's tan. He hadn't just fixed a song, he'd opened a door. And doors in Oakhaven rarely stayed one way. The debt of the deep. 3 days later, the drizzle didn't return, but the pressure did. It started in the plumbing, pipes groaning with a weight that wasn't water. Then, the shadows in Elias's shop began to pool like spilled ink, thick and viscous. A man stepped out of the shadow of a heavy iron lathe. He was tall, gaunt, and wore a suit tailored from literal smoke. "You've disrupted the ecosystem, Thorne," the man said. His voice sounded like many voices speaking at once, all of them tired. The silence was a blanket. It kept the deep things quiet. "Now, thanks to your little repair job, they're waking up. And they're hungry for more than just melody." Elias wiped a wrench on a greasy rag. "I've got a no solicitation sign on the door, Shadow Man." "I am the curator of the stillness," the man replied, ignoring the jab. "And you have stolen a piece of the void to patch a celestial tire. The void wants its mass back. The trade." The curator pointed to the corner of the room. A small, wooden music box sat there, Elias's most personal project, one he never touched. It contained the last recorded laugh of his daughter, preserved in a wax cylinder that was slowly degrading. "The math of the universe is a zero-sum game, Elias," the curator whispered. To keep the anthem of the first star singing in the world above, the void demanded a tithe of sound. Elias looked at the music box. He looked at the sapling outside, which was now attracting birds, creatures that hadn't been seen in Oakhaven for decades. If he gave up the music box, his daughter's voice would be erased from existence. If he didn't, the silence would return, heavier and more lethal than before, swallowing the city whole. The Fixer's Gambit. Elias didn't believe in impossible choices. He believed in structural flaws. "You want a tithe?" Elias asked, his eyes narrowing. "I'll give you a tithe. But not that. You want sound? I'll give you the loudest thing in the world." He grabbed his kit and led the curator down, not back to the weave, but further into the guts of Oakhaven, to the great steam manifold. It was an ancient, rusted heart of a machine that once powered the entire province. It had been idling for a century, vibrating at a frequency so low it was felt rather than heard. Elias began to work. He didn't use silver wire this time. He used heavy lead pipes and massive, iron dampeners. He recalculated the manifold's output, shifting the thermal energy into a pure, sustained acoustic blast. He increased the power, P, until the very air began to shimmer. He wasn't creating music, he was creating a scream. "The exchange." There, Elias shouted over the rising roar of the machinery. A perpetual loop of kinetic noise. "It's ugly, it's loud, and it'll feed your void for 1,000 years. Take the manifold. Leave the girl's voice alone." The curator looked at the roaring machine. The smoke suit he wore whipped violently in the sound waves. Slowly, he reached out and touched the vibrating iron. The scream vanished, sucked into the curator's palm as if through a vacuum. "It lacks elegance," the curator remarked, his form becoming more solid, more human. "But it is efficient." "You are a crude man, Elias Thorne." "I'm a fixer," Elias spat. "Now get out of my basement." The quiet morning. The curator vanished. The pressure lifted. Elias climbed the stairs back to his workshop. He was exhausted, his bones aching from the resonance. He sat at his desk and reached for the music box. He wound the key. Click. Whir. A small, high-pitched giggle filled the room. It was faint, more a ghost of a sound than a recording, but it was there. Outside, the oak tree had grown its first branch. A bird landed on it and began to sing. It wasn't a celestial anthem, and it wasn't a mechanical scream. It was just a bird, singing because it was morning. Elias closed the music box. He had a mountain of broken toasters to get through, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't mind the work. That concludes the saga of the Fixer. Should we leave Elias to his toasters, or would you like to see what happens when that oak tree starts growing something unusual?